Well, hello everyone. This is Jason Zaidema from NAMMA. I'm glad to see you all. In this webinar, it's a little bit different. I feel like I'm talking to myself, but I can see you all as in name that are there. Just before we go on, I've invited Michelle DePuter to give a word of welcome. Michelle is a chaplain for the Montreal Ministry to Seafarers, but currently she's also serving as the Vice President of NAMMA. And so she is the senior ranking officer in our midst today. So I thought I'd give her a few moments to say from her perspective why a conversation like this is important, and why we hope to sort of build the NAMMA family via these kind of conversations. So Michelle, welcome.
Thank you very much, Jason. And welcome to everybody who's participating in this webinar. The conversation started a couple of weeks ago with a NAMMA Executive Committee meeting. And just in conversation, it came up that a number of people really appreciated having the phone calls that were done at the beginning of this whole pandemic, everybody staying home thing. And the suggestion was that it might be nice to have some more conversations just to see how everybody's doing, just kind of to connect a little bit with each other. And I think it's especially important because, as Jason mentioned, NAMMA is a family. I miss all of you. We should have been together in Ottawa last week, and it's a little strange not to have those connections that we were expecting to have. And so to be able to come together and just to have a time of sharing with each other and encouragement, I think is important. And also on behalf of NAMMA, I just want to say that if anybody needs anybody to talk to, the NAMMA board members are here. You can call me, you can call any one of the NAMMA board members just to chat, to see what's going on, or find out if you have questions about whether it's certain programs or how you're doing things. We're all here for you. And so don't hesitate to call any one of the NAMMA board members. We're all kind of in the same boat, and we're here to support one another and encourage each other. So so again, thank you, Jason, for organizing this and getting us together. And I'm sure it will be a good time of just connecting with each other again and seeing how things are going across Canada.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for being on this call. So before we dive into the call, what I'd like to do on this call is just go through a few slides of some of the action steps and resources that are available at this time. But then for the bulk of the call, I'd like to be able to hear from you. And so in order to hear from you, I need to be able to turn on your microphone and recognize you. And so I'd like to just do a little brief tour of, if you haven't been in GoToWebinar before. So in your control panel, you should see your name, and beside your name, there is a little microphone, and right now it should be red with a line through it because you're muted. And then beside that, there's a little hand. Signal. And what I'd like you to do at this time, if it's possible, just to see that you're all alive and listening, if you could push the little hand to raise your hand. There you go. I can see many of you, pushing the hand and raising your hand. That's wonderful to see that you're all alive and well. And then lower your hand, because in a short period of time, when I have questions or comments, that's there. So that's the hand raising. So for those, there shouldn't be any hands raised yet. So I see Denis and Gary have their hand raised. Judith has her hand raised. If you could put your hands down for the time being. Thank you very much. After that, there is also on your control panel a question box. So if you have a question that you want to ask for myself or for others, you can ask that in the question box. And so if someone could just go ahead and ask a question, any question, just for others to see what that question looks like. Just write a question, how is everyone doing today? What day is it there, Eric Finney? Thank you very much, Eric. Have a question. And then also here, there's a chat box where we can chat together, or you can send a specific, you can send me a specific private question. But usually we can just stick to the questions, and so that's the way it is. So this is a webinar, so you'll only be able to see me and not each other. We have too many people to have a regular webinar, even as a regular phone conference. Even if we had a regular phone conference, only a certain number of us would be able to see each other. So, uh, so for this first part, I'd like to just talk a little bit about some of the conversations and resources that are available. And then after that, I'd like, for the bulk of the conversation, to hear from you. So if you do have a question about what I've said, we'll just hold those questions for a few minutes and then come back to them, circle back to them when we have a time of questions at the end of the conversation, at the end of the hour. I don't want this conversation to go any more than 1 hour for sure, but if we're finished a few minutes early, there's no problem. So all of us are living fairly the same thing insofar as coronavirus. I'm in Montreal, Quebec, and we're spread around the country, but we're all sort of living fairly similar things. And probably we've also heard the effects of the coronavirus on seafarers. But to be more specific, I've been involved in a number of conversations with companies, with the Canadian government and others, and there are a number of key issues that seafarers are living that are sort of an extension of what all of us are living in a certain way. So you should all be able to see the screen that I'm sharing right now. Some of the key problems that seafarers are facing, the biggest ones are to do with repatriation, going back to their countries, and crew change. So the new crews coming back on board. Many of the crews now could be weeks, if not months, over contract, and they're living the stress of that. But the big challenge is bringing the new crew back on board. So it's one thing of crew going home; it's another one bringing them back on board. Obviously, border closures in places like India and the Philippines, where large numbers of seafarers need to go home, have been very, very challenging. A key challenge has been certificate expiration. These have been overcome largely. Governments have been flexible on these. Companies and unions have been flexible on these, giving an extra month or extra 2 months. But very soon, one that is a very hard challenge is passport renewal. I was speaking to the head of the Seafarers International Union in the United States last week, and he was saying that there are hundreds of seafarers in his union who are hard up against passport renewals, and they simply can't get their passports renewed, and it's a very big challenge. And then there's a number of other certificates and other sorts of documentation that seafarers and shipping companies' ships need to be renewed, and all of that is just a big headache. Large challenge for seafarers is proper PPE, both for themselves but also for visitors on board. There's been a number of cases worldwide where the local stevedores, it's not so much a Canadian problem, but in other countries, the local stevedores are not wearing proper PPE, are not respecting social distancing. Where pilots, there's some tension between should pilots be wearing the PPE, should crew be wearing the PPE when pilots are on board. These personal protective equipment, masks and gloves and other personal protective equipment. It's a big challenge. It's not only should you wear it, but where do you get it from? Crew testing is a huge challenge right now, especially what kind of test kits to use. I was on a call yesterday, and many companies are saying, well, we want to buy the test kits, but what test kits do we even buy? Are the ones on the market that are commercially available even worthwhile? How do we use those test kits? And probably the biggest headache of all now is the quarantining of new crew. So if they can navigate the borders and send some home, they can navigate the borders, get new ones back. How long and how do they quarantine new crew when they do arrive back on board the ship? What's the protocol for that? This is causing lots of crewing agents, manning agents, managers to stay up at night. Very, very challenging. The human drama of this is coming in lots of those, not so much on board, but at home with no new jobs. Especially in the cruise industry, this will be very, very difficult for those whose livelihood is dependent on new contracts in the cruise sector. It will be many months before the cruise sector is back up on its feet as it was before this. It's pretty incredible to see how quickly such a mighty industry has been brought to its knees. And as we all know, the sort of general effects are fatigue, stress, frustration, and an amplification of social isolation, which seafarers already know. If there's something sort of nice about this all, it's that seafarers, that sort of our general population is learning intuitively now what social isolation is all about. I don't think we'll have to sort of in sea blindness, the social isolation point of sea blindness might be easier for us to talk about than it was previous. So, what are some of the things that we're doing about it? Well, I've been involved in lots of conversations in the past numbers of weeks in relation to my work with ICMA. Every Tuesday morning, I have a call with the International Chamber of Shipping, which includes the senior representatives of the International Transport Workers Federation, the International Maritime Health Association, with some of my colleagues in ICMA, the head of MTS, Apostleship of the Sea Sailor Society, with ISWAN Seafarers UK. Every Tuesday morning, I have that call. Every Thursday morning, a similar group, this time more with UN agencies. So again, with the ICS and the ITF, but then with the World Health Organization, the International Maritime Organization, the International Labor Organization, and again, representing ICMA in that call. If nothing else, is a great introduction to acronyms. All these different folks on these calls are representing so many different acronyms that you need to know. Here in Canada, and it's actually one of the reasons we're having the conversation this week, we're having direct conversations with representatives of Transport Canada. Last week, when we were supposed to have the NAMMA conference, we were supposed to have a committee meeting with Transport Canada, the ITF, and industry groups. And that conversation has been pushed back to this Friday coming up. So one of the reasons I wanted to get together with you today was to gather information for that conversation with Transport Canada. And that conversation with Transport Canada happens with NAMMA, and we have a representative of NAMMA. That's at this point Michelle DePuter, and then a representative of MTS Canada, Mission to Seafarers Canada, who is right now Reverend Judith Altry, and then AOS Canada, Father Andrew Thrasingham, both of whom are the regional coordinators for their groups. And then one of the really nice things that we've done for communicating in this whole thing, one that's been really encouraging to me, is we've had prayer webinars for 15-minute prayer webinars, and now it continues to go on each Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you haven't joined those, then I would strongly encourage you to join those. We've been trying to disseminate lots of information over the past number of weeks. If you're on Facebook, you can follow us at ICMA or at NAMMA. We have a web magazine called the Murray Report, and we've been putting out regular articles on the Murray Report dealing with news from all of you and from around the world. And we have a training platform called Murray Training, where there are free courses open now. So if you yourselves or your staff would like to take some of those courses, they are available now, and we have coupon codes if you'd like to take them without any cost. Some of the tools that have been built in the last few weeks to connect better with seafarers, if it's not possible to go on board or to welcome seafarers in the club, what to do? Well, some new tools have been built, and a lot of them to do with the internet. The Chat to a Chaplain tool with ICMA and NAMMA and the Mission to Seafarers launched this week. And you can go to any ICMA, NAMMA, or Mission to Seafarers webpage and click on the chat button and get connected with one of the chaplains who are on call on that program. Sailor Society has the Wellness at Sea chat that is available. The German Seamen's Mission built dsm.care. The Danish Seamen's Church built Samtaler til SOS. And then local ministry apps have been built or upgraded. Ministry to Seafarers in Montreal has a local app. Mariners Club at Hong Kong has a local app. And then all of you chaplains around the world have been very, very active on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, for those who are in the funding game, there are a number of funds that have launched or have focused their work on funding for coronavirus. National and provincial funding programs. A really interesting little document made by Professor Jennifer Robson of Carleton University has a great links to national and provincial funding here in Canada. I would strongly encourage you to look at that document if you are looking for funding from national and provincial programs set up because of the coronavirus. The ITF Seafarers Trust has set up a large £1 million grant program. The TK Foundation, similar program. You can email Dennis Trelevin at the TK Foundation. And then Seafarers UK has set up a new fund. It's unclear whether this funding will be available for Canada. It might be. I'm trying to get more information, but we'll see what happens from that, and I'll share more information as it's available. So those are some of the information, the communication, dissemination, some of the programs and funding that are available. And at the end of our conversation, I can take questions about any of that and would be happy to answer questions. But now for a good chunk of our conversation, I'd like to hear from you. You are the sort of the frontline folks in this regard, and so I'd like to hear what your experience is, and it would be great to hear from at least one person from every port, but we can have multiple people. It's no problem. The more, the merrier. What are what is the experience of the coronavirus in your port? What services have you needed to stop or suspend? What services can you still provide? Where do you find the biggest challenges? Where do you find the possibilities going forward? And so I'm wondering if we could start from west and then coming east, if it would be possible. Is there anyone from the West Coast, whether it's Gary or Dilip, or who might give us an update on any of the or Peter, any of the three of you might give us an update on what's being provided in either in Vancouver or Roberts Bank or anywhere else on the West Coast at this time. If you just raise your hand, I can acknowledge you and then turn on your microphone. So either Peter or Gary or Dilip. Okay, I see Dilip, I see your hand, so I'll open your microphone. Dilip, go ahead.
Yeah, well, the port activity as far as ships coming in and going has not seen that much of a decrease in the port of Vancouver. We see perhaps more ships out at anchor, so there's a little longer waiting period in between. But otherwise, in terms of the actual trade, loading and unloading, there has been a slight decrease, but frankly not all that much. So cargo is coming in and going out. With regard to visiting ships, over the last month or 5 weeks now, we gradually reduced from our regular ship visits where we go into the office and the galley mess rooms and maybe have a meal, etc., which is our norm that most of us do as chaplains, to just meeting with seafarers on the deck, to a meeting in the gangway, and now to kind of chatting with them from the dock itself, and maybe meeting with them at the base of the gangway, giving or selling SIM cards to them, because that's an increased priority for the seafarers, and still giving them some materials if they will accept them, various prayer materials, magazines, and we pick up bread from a local bakery, Cobb's Bakery, every week, huge quantities. And so we take it. It's a little treat for seafarers. The Filipinos in particular love the bread. So we are doing that too, and most of them will accept those materials from us. We have two centers, one downtown and one at Roberts Bank, and we initially closed the centers ourselves around mid-March, except for the side where they could come in to avail of free Wi-Fi. We technically still have that open at Roberts Bank in particular, where up to 5 ships that berth, 3 container ships, 2 coal ships, the crews can walk right to that they don't need a ride or any transportation to get to the center for free Wi-Fi. But I would say for the last at least 2 weeks now, we have had no crews disembark or on crew leave. So they won't even come down to walk across. Sometimes the nearest one's a matter of maybe 50 meters or 100 meters to the center. So they are being very cautious. They are fearful of picking up any kind of illness from us here. In the initial stages, of course, we were concerned about them bringing in things because so many of the ships come from China and South Korea and etc. But now the concern is entirely the opposite. Of course, when we do communicate with them and meet with them, we try to keep our distance. We're all wearing masks so being very careful, and we are respectful of their caution and fear. We do get calls from them through WhatsApp and Messenger and communicate that way. I know I've talked to several seafarers, not only in Vancouver, but I'll get messages from Alaska or the other side of the Pacific or down in LA or whatever. And so that's a good way of keeping sort of personal contact with them and offering some sort of pastoral support. So I think that and you know what we're experiencing, I think, is not all that different from many, if not most, of the other ports around North America.
Thank you so much, Dilip. I should say I should better introduce everyone. Deacon Dilip Athaid is AOS chaplain in working especially in Delta Port, and his colleague, Reverend Peter Smith, is also put up his hand. Peter, go ahead if you have. You'll have to unmute yourself. I think you muted yourself, Peter. Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. The only thing I wanted to add was, and thank you, Dilip. That was a good summary. Was the importance of partnerships. And I know that here a number of cases have come up. I'm working with, for example, the ITF, because as you've already mentioned, there have been increased stress on seafarers and the issues, the problems that you mentioned. And I think going forward, those partnerships are going to be all the more important for seafarers. So that's all I wanted to say, and good to join with everyone, Jason.
Thank you so much, Peter. I'm wondering, Gary Rusma, if you're on the call. Gary, would you have anything to add? We can circle back to Gary. I think that's all the folks who are on the West Coast. If we come across into the Great Lakes, I'm not sure if there is anybody here from Thunder Bay. I don't see, please forgive me, I don't see anyone from Thunder Bay on the call or coming down through the Great Lakes. So next would be, I would suggest probably around the Hamilton, Toronto, Oshawa area. And so I'm wondering if we could start if we start in Hamilton, and then I think we have a few also maybe from the Welland Canal who may or may not have an update. Daniel Fennenauer is the Mission to Seafarers chaplain in Hamilton. Dan, welcome to the call. Dan, how are things in Hamilton Port?
Oh, they're pretty busy. Ships are still coming in here also, and with the seafarers not being able to get off and me not being able to get on, it's a little bit of a challenge. But we were able to work through the agents to let them know that we're still here, and so they've been contacting me with email and WhatsApp, and I've been providing the SIM cards as everybody else does, and also doing some shopping for them at the stores. And that's one issue that I've come across is, they're going to ask for things in larger quantities than what we might buy for ourselves. And last 2 weeks ago, I had a captain ask me for 3,000 tablets of vitamin C, and that's quite an order there to get. Thankfully, with Judith's help, I was able to get the whole 3,000. But I'm wondering if there was something that we could have some ID or something from Transport Canada. When we went into the stores to get a lot of stuff to say, oh, we're buying this for a ship. For the crew, can we, just in case people mount an objection or something to them, to us buying things in such quantities. Hasn't come up yet, but it might. And that's about what we're doing now, is just trying to provide what they need, meet them. A lot of them say to me that they have, when they left Europe, it wasn't so bad. And by the time they got over here, of course, the border was closed and they couldn't get off the ship. So they're a little bewildered as to how fast this has come. Haven't had any trouble with contracts. Everybody's been kind of in the middle of their contracts, so they're not worried yet. And those are the things that are going on here.
One point of clarification. So definitely, I've taken note of this question for Transport Canada, and we can raise it on Friday, and that I'll raise it to them in that conversation. When crews come to Hamilton, how do they? What's the way they contact you? Is it that you go to the gangway and ask them, or do they call you, or what's the way they're in contact with you most?
They usually call me. We sent out, Judith and I sent out Judith sent out a email to all the agents to say, we're still here, we're willing to help, and we've been relying upon the agents now to pass that information along. So they have, and so once the agents let them know we're still here and we can help, then they either use the WhatsApp or the email to be in touch. This morning I just got one from MTS in England, a request they had sent in through them and passed it along to me. Unfortunately, it was for Thunder Bay, so I had to pass it along to Ed. But yeah, so they've been finding ways to contact us. I don't go to the ships anymore, just without a request, because I'm afraid if I happen to have it or carry it or have it on me, I don't want to be taking that chance of giving it to them. So.
Thank you so much, Dan, for that update. I'm wondering if either Deacon Michael Timmins or Deacon Deanne Elliott have any updates. I'm not sure if you're doing any visiting, either of you are doing any visiting at this time, but you can raise your hand. Otherwise, we can slide up to Toronto and Oshawa. Are there anyone from the Toronto and Oshawa area that would like to give an update? Oh, I see Deacon Michael Timmins has just put up his hand. Those from Toronto and Oshawa can just wait for a moment. Deacon Michael, go ahead. You'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah, there you go. Unfortunately, we still can't hear you. Sorry, Deacon Michael, we can't hear you. You are unmuted. We'll circle, but I'll try to come back to you in just a few moments. is there anyone from the Toronto area that would like to give an update? Reverend Judith Altree, the Director of Mission to Seafarers, Southern Ontario. Go ahead, Judith.
Good morning, good afternoon. Who cares? What time is it? Thanks, Jason, again for all your hard work in coordinating these conversations. It's extremely helpful. Just to add to what Dan already has said, one of the important things for us very early on, we had the wonderful cooperation of the harbor master for what is now the Hamilton Oshawa Port Authority, or as we affectionately call them, HOPA, and who the harbor master happens to also be on our board, which is extremely helpful. But we have a lot of support from Hamilton Oshawa. In the very, very beginning, as Dan said, sent a letter out to all of the agents and everybody connected, all the port partners connected in Hamilton and Oshawa, to reiterate and remind them of the fact that we're here and what we're prepared to do, and they have thankfully been taking us up on it. I do not get onto the port at all, sorry, not onto the port, onto the dock at all. I feel a little bit like a dealer because I'm selling SIM cards through the fence. So I push little purple packages of SIM cards and the money comes through the fence, and it's done in the dark at night. And the agent is kind of chuckling about this, saying he hoped the police didn't come by to wonder what we were up to. But we've had a lot of help from, as I said, Hamilton Oshawa. Dan has been extremely busy, as he said. I have not been asked yet to do any shopping, but I do know that the captains are extremely reluctant to let the crews go anywhere outside of the port gates, because in Toronto, we are downtown. We are across from a big grocery store with a pharmacy, which would be wonderful for them, but they're terrified to access it. When they do come to the gate, they've got their masks on. I have my mask on. We're wearing gloves. Some of them have face protectors as well, the visors. So, you know, they're terrified, and yep, they're in very good humor. And I ask how everybody's doing, and they're fine. And Dan said, and I reiterate, there's no concern at this moment with contract. So the first saltwater ship, I've just gotten a message from Vicky, is coming in soon to Oshawa. So that will be my first contact with the agents down there. I may go out to see if there's anything I can do, but I will certainly be staying in touch with the ship and with the agent. You know, we're not taking any chances here at all.
Thank you very much, Judith. I'm wondering if
You're
anyone else from Hamilton, Toronto, Oshawa would like to add anything to what's been said. I see a couple other folks from that area there. Michael Timmins is back. We'll see if we can unmute him this time. Now you have to unmute yourself. Deacon Michael, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Oh, there you are. Nothing new on the canal. I'm still, well, there's the virus and the boarding issue there, but the main issue for me is trying to solve the cost of the gangway. It's an ongoing. I renewed the connection with the contractor. He's saying basically there's nothing much they can do for me. If I happen to be around at the right time, I might be able to board with the pilot. He figured the pilot wouldn't let me stand there by myself, but there's a matter of getting off the ship when I get to whatever lock I'm getting off of. So that is an issue, and I thought I was hoping for Ottawa, because I thought maybe I could make some contacts there and talk to see if there's anything available funding wise, or if there's any programs for support in that area. It's unlike a dock issue. You're on a moving vessel, right? So I have to get on and get off, and that cost we just can't absorb. So that's it. That's all I can say for now.
Well, thank you. Definitely, that's on the list of things. If it weren't for coronavirus, that would be one of the things we could raise with this new sort of National Seafarers Welfare Board that's being formed. So we can put that on the short list of things as soon as coronavirus is in the rearview mirror in the coming months. Then hopefully we can get back to the regular issues. So I thank you for that update from the Welland Canal. Anyone else from the Toronto, Oshawa, Hamilton area that would like to add anything new or different? You can put your hands up, or we can slide on up to Montreal. Any of the chaplains in Montreal that would like to update what is happening in Montreal, either Chaplain David or Father Andrew. We've heard already from Michelle DePuter at the outset of this conversation. Chaplain David Roseboom from the Montreal Ministry to Seafarers. David, you'll have to unmute yourself. Hello,
okay.
David.
Hello, thank you, Jason. And yeah, it's nice to do something like this, to hear everyone, even if it's because of the virus and all, the social isolation. So yeah, just a few things. You know, as people have mentioned already, the agents, we also find ourselves working more collaboratively with the agents. I think some of them were kind of annoyed by us before, but now it seems like, especially with the SIM cards, they'll say like, how are you guys getting SIM cards? Because everything is closed. So that's a really cool thing. The demand for SIM cards is up. Just regarding, you know, what Dan was talking about earlier, you know, buying in large quantities. Yeah, for sure. You know, usually I try to buy things at Walmart. I know there in Ontario have a wholesale club, which here in Quebec they call it Club Entrepôt. But I did have one ship that ordered tons of stuff, and so I went to the Club Entrepôt, and I was able to get most of it there. So that was helpful. But I do kind of think of a way that there could be a system to do all this, depending on how many months it goes on. You know, first of all, we do have an email that Michelle made that we send, or that the agents send out. That doesn't work perfectly because sometimes the captains don't communicate it to the crew, and you know, sometimes like some of the, you know, you'll get an order and then, you know, you'll bring the stuff to the ship and then there's other people there that didn't know that they could order something. So that's not perfect, but let's say like the captain could, or they receive the email, you know, they have your Facebook information, you know, WhatsApp, they can send you emails. And I tell them, just look on the walmart.ca website. And then when you type things in the search box, underneath there's an option for available in store. So then they're going to see exactly the quantity, you know, what the item is, the price, and then they know exactly what to expect and how much it's going to cost. So that's something that can work pretty well. And in theory, they could send such an order like a week in advance so that you could order it online. But you know, usually they're ordering after the ship is already in the port. So we found that to be really helpful. But again, it doesn't usually work out exactly that way, either because, you know, the captain received the email, but he didn't inform anyone, or, you know, some of the crew found out, but not others. And sometimes they order, you know, 60 bags of Doritos or something, which you can't get at one Walmart. So yeah, that's our situation.
I'm reminded in these various things, those of you who've you know, gone through diaconal training or clergy training, they didn't teach any of these how to how to buy 60 bags of Doritos and sell SIM cards through the fence. They didn't teach that in school, that's for sure. Father Andrew, AOS from Montreal, and also the Canadian Regional Director of AOS. Go ahead, Father Andrew. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, very good.
Okay, nice meeting you all through this webinar. And I was in contact with David, if in case of any emergency to call me, but so far I haven't heard from him. But anyway, with the port restrictions, we respect their restrictions as well, and the protection and the protocol that we have to follow. But what I feel is that our heart goes to the seafarers who are suffering, even the cruise ship crews who are suffering most during these difficult times, you know, to be in contact with their families if possible. So I drop in sometimes into the Seafarer Center to be there, but it looks like an empty tomb now, you know. There's nothing and no activities, but it is sad to say the reality is hurting everybody, but at the same time, our prayers, our contacts with them in some way can empathize their difficulties, sympathize with the losses that they are facing, and our prayers can encourage their more moral strength, I think, at least that we can do from home.
Thank you so much, Father Andrew. It's an interesting comment about, I mean, the empty tomb. That's certainly in this Easter period is something to think about. There's probably some fruit in thinking about meditating on that. Going a little bit further east, Denis Côté, I wonder if you could give us an update from the, if you'd like to give us an update from Saguenay, you can put up your hand. If you are there, yes, Denis, go ahead, Denis.
Okay, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So here there's two ports. You have Port Alfred and Grand Anse. And I was thinking that nobody would happen. But finally, well, I'm quite busy with the crew members because this time of the year in Port Alfred, we have regular ships calling. So they already know my phone number, and the ships are provided with the phone from the agency on board for the duration of the stay, so we can communicate together. And for about 2 weeks now, I'm providing some provisions to the ship. It was quite complicated because they give me orders by crew member, so you see, and sometimes it's quite big provision lists. So I had last week only one ship was about something like $1,200 at Walmart. So I spent all afternoon there to shop for them. And then since I cannot go on port site, so my assistant is doing the delivery to the ship, and we collect the money. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not 5 ships now requested some provisions. Yesterday and twice in Grand Anse. And yesterday in Grand Anse there was a ship. There's a ship still there, and the crew members are from 9 different nationalities, all from China, from Myanmar, Indonesia, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, and so a lot of people, 23. And it was so windy, it was crazy windy. It was because I had a lot of stock in the car, and it was floating in the back of the car because of the wind. It was really, really complicated to manage, but we found a way, and they invited me on board. So that was the first time I was going on board a ship since maybe beginning of March, and I had my N95 mask, so it was not so bad. And so I went to the mess room, and they wanted to have SIM cards. So I provided SIM cards, and the IVTA needs some information, some instruction to use. So the captain was an old Pakistani guy, so he does not understand so much. So I managed with the cadet, was a very bright guy, so I understood very, very quickly. And I left my stock there for and I will collect tomorrow because they have a second order for them. So I will do some shopping tomorrow morning and bring back to the ship. After that, I can collect the money. So in this port, I am in close communication with the agent of Lower St. Lawrence, and is taking me update for every ship calling there, and we know in advance what is going up. So we can also do some. I no more manage the big provision, but there's a fruit and vegetable warehouse here, so it's possible to order free delivery to the ship. So, but I no more take this in charge. So I work with the agency, and in Port Alfred, I had a case to the hospital about 2 weeks ago. It was really a nightmare to go to the emergency with the crew member who was dressed with his 3M suit and mask, and also some goggles on his eyes and gloves and everything. Finally was tested for coronavirus, even if I told them it was not requested because the guy was in quarantine. So, but finally, so I had to manage with this guy for maybe 4 or 5 hours after you have been tested, because cannot stay at the hospital, cannot go back to the gangway. So I had to manage. I spent 4 hours with this guy in my car, not knowing what to do. And finally, find a place in the hotel where you can stay until you get the result. But this is quite stressful complications we have sometimes in this. I never know how it will do. So this morning I had a request for a crew member in the Granans that needs to see a doctor. So we have a private clinic. So I try to manage to have a visit to this private clinic tomorrow. But finally, I was thinking to be very, very quiet, but I'm very busy, very busy with these. But the seafarers appreciate so much this type of service, and so since they cannot go ashore, so at least they can get their provision, and they appreciate very much. So I'll still another ship now in Port Alfred who requested some shopping. So tomorrow morning I will shop for 2 ships. And but it's okay, but I'm always I'm supposed to be in confined, but finally I'm always exposed. So it's difficult to manage, but it's okay. I think we'll survive. There's no problem.
Well, thank you so much, Denis, for those. I'm sure we could continue. That was quite encouraging to hear the challenges and the results. If we can go now to St. John and then to Halifax, either Eric Finney or any of the representatives of Halifax, if you are available. Eric, would you be available to comment on St. John at all? So I'll unmute Eric. We're running up against the time, so if we could keep our comments relatively short. Eric, go ahead.
Yes, Jason, thank you. Very early on, our board of directors took the decision to shut down transportation and to shut down the center and disinfect and sanitize it, probably before most ports did. We acted quite quickly and informed the pilots and agents just to make seafarers aware that we can provide emergency services and certainly SIM cards, and our agents have often handled SIM cards for us. My focus over the coming days will be to try to increase dockside Wi-Fi access. This is something that we have 3 docks that are set up well right now, and we need to do 2 or 3 more to get good port coverage. The reality I think that we're facing, though, is that this is not over until we have a vaccine. We're looking at 12 to 18 months. So by the time that we get there, we will likely have established some new ways of doing things and likely not be going back to the way the things were. So Next week, I hope to meet with our board of directors and just to begin to talk about, what our original purpose is and how do we now accomplish it given the restrictions that we have, and do sort of a blue sky brainstorming session. And be particularly interested in hearing other strategies that people are thinking about more medium and long term. And my understanding is that we're facing a major shift, that the new normal will not look anything like the old normal. It's not going to be about seafarer centers and vans. It's going to be about other solutions to support seafarers in their welfare and their families. So that's about where we're at. I'd be very interested in doing some regional or national or international brainstorming around what this might look like in the future. So I'll sign off with that.
Thank you so much, Eric. There's a bunch in what you just said that we could unpack in another webinar, but it's good to get that update. Again, we're just the last few minutes. I'm wondering if there is, if Helen from Halifax could give us an update on what's happening in Halifax. Helen, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
There you go. Hi, Helen.
Oh, very good. Nice to see you, Jason, and wonderful to hear from everybody else. Very similar to everyone else's situation. We're going day by day. I'm very pleased to have a wonderful skeleton crew who are able to assist with going to the bottom of gangways. We pre-arrange the sale of SIM cards for the most part and top-ups. I endeavor to contact the captains of the ships before they come alongside. Then we establish who's going to make contact at the bottom of the gangway. We just exchange the little Ziploc bags, the SIMs and the top-ups and the money. I've gone for provisions a number of times, shopping, which does present a challenge because very often there's only 5 people permitted in stores at any given time. I know a number of my volunteers in our Joseph Lute, our new part-time assistant manager, has done that a number of times as well. So we currently have 2 ships in the port of Halifax. One has been here for almost 3 weeks. The other one just arrived last week. They arrived not prepared for the cold weather, and we were very fortunate to reach out to a fairly new community partner. I loaded down my car with sleeping bags and winter coats, not once, but twice. So we're very grateful for these wonderful partnerships. As Eric has pointed out, I think that there's going to be a new normal, very different than what we're used to in the past. But we keep on keeping on, and it's working very well. We are visiting pretty much every ship that comes in to the port of Halifax. And sadly, the thing that I get concerned about most is the fact that we cannot reach out to all the seafarers, and we can't touch base with every single one on the ship. We're trying to communicate to see if there's any needs with reference to ministry. I do have a new partnership developed with a company called Praxis Medical Group, who can assist us if there are any medical problems. And other than that, it's just onward and upward. Joseph Lute, I'm not sure if he's on with us here, Jason, today, is he? He may have something to add, but we're pretty much, I'm happy with the way things are going. I divide my time between home and the mission. And I pray that things are going to change very quickly and hopefully before 18 months.
Joseph,
so thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Helen. Joseph, would you like to add anything? Otherwise, we have a couple questions or points from the audience. One is about PPE of dock workers and others that are that you're working with when you go to do your ship visiting. There's others that aren't wearing PPE. How does that work? What PPE do we need to wear? What PPE do others around us need to wear? I'm going to put this on the agenda for my meeting with others on Friday with Transport Canada to see if they have a response. But then one question from Jos Leclerc, who is a board member of the International Sailor Society Canada, who's on this call. And Jos asks, where are the ship chandlers? Why do chaplains have to do these huge groceries for crews? I'm wondering if anyone has a response to that question. I have hunches, but I'm wondering if you have a response. Gary or Dilip, I'm trying to, Gary, I don't see your, somehow you're not connected to audio, Gary. I'd like to open your audio, but I don't see you anywhere. David Roseboom, I see his hand is up. David, perhaps you could give us insight here. You'll have to unmute yourself, David. David, you'll have to unmute yourself. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, so sometimes when I go to the gangway, and in fact, maybe 30% of the time, then I talk to the crew and they say, you know, we already did order things through the ship chandler. Like the captain was able to arrange something. But yeah, I'm not sure what, the feeling I get is maybe every ship chandler is a little bit different. Like some of them don't, I don't know, are not is interested in doing this, and I think it also depends on the captain and the company. So and the reality is I think that as chaplains we feel happy doing this because we feel like we're fulfilling a need. So yeah, but I didn't do a survey, but yeah, it is something that we could look at more in the future to see how, you know, how every company is responding. And like I said before, like for sure with the agents now, we have a much closer cooperation than we did 6 weeks ago. So perhaps it can be with the ship chandlers as well.
Thank you, David. I see Dilip and Daniel have a short answer, and then we'll probably be right at time. So Dilip, if you have just a few sort of a quick answer to it.
Yeah, well, in Vancouver, the ships still seem to be receiving their regular provisions, you know, with the big provision trucks bringing in their groceries and so on, which is a regular for most of the ships that visit here. And it seems like they are adding more snacks and personal toiletries and so on to those orders. We've got some evidence of that happening. We also have normally a lot of Filipino chandlers that go on with bagfuls of stuff and set up shop in the crew messes, and they have, of course, ceased to operate. That would be mainly in the Filipino cruise ships, which is, you know, good almost half of the ships that come here. So they have not been operating. And you know, I had some toiletries donated by one of the parish, and you know, been giving them out to ships' crews, but other than that, yeah, we haven't received. I haven't received requests. I ask ships' crews if they want me to buy anything, because there's a huge mall very close by, and I haven't had any specific requests for that.
Thank you so much, Deacon Dilip. And finally, Dan Fanenauer in Hamilton. Dan, do you have any clarification on this for a few moments?
Yeah, it's mostly a question of price. I've tried to direct ships to our local chandler because she's very supportive of the mission. So I like to direct the business that way. But the prices just don't match the budgets that the ships are given for getting their provisions. It seems to be price. That's it.
Thank you, Daniel. So Gary Rusma, whose microphone doesn't seem to be working, says that in his experience, some Filipino chandlers are actually operating a bit, and there are some that call in. So there is some, but obviously maybe it's reduced as in regards to the normal amounts. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining this webinar. We've come to the end of our hour together. I hope that you found this useful. And if you did find it useful, send me an email. We can do it again in the coming weeks or month if you'd like to hear again an update from everyone else across Canada. I think you all know my contact information, Jason Zeitem at NAMMA.org, 514-993-6528. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere, working from my home office. So give me a call or send me an email if you have any questions or comments.